So we have oxytocin and the vasopressin hormone that is secreted by what? The posterior lobe, right? So let's discuss the functions. Well, before that, remember oxytocin is OT. You can also call oxytocin as pitocin, right? What are the target cells for oxytocin? The target cell of oxytocin is the cells of mammary glands. Remember, mammary glands means the breast. Now what happens? There is contraction of uterine muscles and the myoepithelial cells of the lactating breast. So it helps in the secretion of milk from the mammary glands. So that is why this hormone is also known as the birth hormone. Why birth hormone? Because during birth of the child, it is going to help in the contraction of the uterine muscles, so which help in the birth of the child. And why it is called as milk ejecting hormones? Because it leads to contraction of this myoepithelial cells, so it leads to the release of milk from the mammary glands. So that is why we call oxytocin as birth hormone or milk ejecting hormone. Now what do milkmen do? Nowadays milkmen inject synthetic oxytocin, which is also called pitocin hormone, into cows and buffaloes, so that they can have more of the milk from them. So this is not a good way of procuring more milk from animals. Why? Because the milk that you are going to drink, it is also going to contain this synthetic hormone that is called pitocin, right? So remember that the oxytocin hormone or the pitocin hormone, it is also known as the birth hormone or milk ejecting hormone. So from these terms only you can make out what is the function of the oxytocin hormone. Birth hormone, because it is contracting the uterine wall, uterine muscles, so it is going to help in the easy birth of the baby. Milk ejecting hormone, why? Because it is going to help in the secretion from the mammary gland, the secretion of milk from the mammary glands. Then next hormone we have the vasopressin hormone, right? Now vasopressin hormone is also known as antidiuretic hormone or pitressin. ADH, antidiuretic hormone or pitressin. What are the target cells? You can see the target cell of ADH is what? The cells of the kidney. So it has two effects. The first is the antidiuretic effect and the second is the pressor effect. So what is the antidiuretic effect? The antidiuretic effect is the increase in the reabsorption of water in tubule and ducts of nephrons. It helps in reabsorption of water from glomerular filtrate. So as a whole, what is going to happen? When there is increase in the reabsorption of water in the tubule and ducts of nephrons in kidneys, this is going to lead to the reabsorption of water from glomerular filtrate, means the increase in the reabsorption of water is going to take place from glomerular filtrate. This is the antidiuretic function of vasopressin hormone or antidiuretic hormone. Then it also has a pressor effect. Now what is this pressor effect? When the involuntary muscles they contract. Now involuntary muscles means the muscles whose functioning or working is not under your will, under your control. What are those muscles? For example, the muscles of the intestine, the muscles of the gallbladder, they are not under your control. So these are the involuntary muscles. So the pressor effect means the involuntary muscles, they are going to contract, which is going to lead to rise in the blood pressure. So it is the pressor effect of vasopressin hormone, that is antidiuretic hormone. So these two hormones are the hormones of the posterior lobe, and the secretion from the posterior lobe is also known as what? It is known as pituitary. It is known as pituitary. The secretion from the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland is known as pituitary. And remember one very important point, that the secretion of the posterior lobe, it is not secreted in the bloodstream directly, it is secreted in the hypothalamus. The posterior lobe is not going to directly secrete hormones, it is going to secrete in the hypothalamus, right? So we have two hormones that we have discussed under posterior lobe, that is oxytocin or pitocin, or vasopressin or ADH, that is antidiuretic hormone or pitressin. So I hope from the names that and the terms that I have given you, like for oxytocin we have birth hormone or milk ejecting hormone, you can make out the function of the hormone oxytocin, and the antidiuretic effect which is linked with what? The kidneys, because the target cells of vasopressin is what? Are the cells of the kidneys. So how are they going to function? and you have understood the function of both the hormones. So I hope that the entire hormones that are secreted by the whole of pituitary gland that are very clear to you, and you can also just remember this in this way, that what are the hormones secreted by the anterior lobe, the intermediate lobe and the posterior lobe. So just remember, the posterior lobe secretes two hormones, that is the oxytocin and ADH. ADH is antidiuretic hormone, and the intermediate lobe secretes only one hormone, that is MSH, that is melanocyte secreting hormone or melanocyte stimulating hormone, which deals with the pigments. And you can also make out the hormones that are secreted by the anterior lobe. So just remember, by names you can make out what are going to be the target cells and what are going to be the functions performed by these hormones of the pituitary gland. And remember that pituitary gland is the master endocrine gland because it is controlling the secretions of other endocrine glands also.